So I'm gonna try to present to you Aikas Žado Laboratory today, Žeimiai Manor House, and bear with me. It's gonna be dense, and it's also a kind of a way for me to really untangle what we are. And afterwards, I also want to invite you for a discussion. So after the presentation, I'm also gonna put a lot of pictures on a slideshow, and then we can have just a talk also of everything that you're gonna hear and the questions you're gonna have. And just, really come up with the questions, okay? Because this needs some discussion. And I know it's gonna be a lot, so it's not working. Okay. So the lineup gonna be like this. I'm gonna give you a little bit of my bio, then I'm gonna ask this question, what is Aikas Žado Laboratory? And then I'm going to try to represent and present to you Aikas Žado Laboratory's programs. And also I'm going to try to present crip materiality and the upcoming solo show, Si-bioarchitecture to Walk in Conversation of Ghosts that we are planning to have here in New York. Also, I would want to take this moment to say my personal stance because I think it's very important. I stand with Palestinian people and I call for ceasefire, and I think it's very important also to notice that in institutional level. But that is my own personal opinion, right? I'm also going to be tomorrow in the Bryant Park at 3 p.m. in a protest if you want to join me. Okay, so I think I can be located in a spot reserved for interdisciplinary art because I'm both an artist, a curator, and a researcher. I have my bachelor's in film, video, interactive arts in Middlesex University, London. I got my master's in political sciences in social and political critique, which was the only program in Lithuania which is based on critical leftist thought. And now I am a PhD candidate in comparative gender studies in Central European University. And I create visual arts, video, sculpture, installation, various forms of written materials, of course, and curatorial practices for Aikas Žado Laboratory that I'm going to present to you. At the moment, my main artistic and curatorial practices circulate around the themes of love, toxicities, bodies, embodiments, and healing, and my theoretic interests encapsulate gender, biopolitics, affect theories, critical disability studies, and dark ecology. And overall, I think my curiosity lies in the questioning and offering ways to rethink social and political issues via the broad scope of contemporary arts. My curated both solo and group exhibitions include Tar Amber Ash, which was my first one, then Biophantomatic Sessions, Decaying, Nothing to Regret, Enchanted Landscapes, Mimesis, and Angsty Places. I'm also an awardee of a Young Artist Scholarship from Lithuanian Council for Culture in 2018, 2020, and 2021. And I was also granted the permanent artist status from Lithuanian Culture of Ministry. And my works were exhibited in Lithuania, in Germany, and the UK. Because I have this academic background and because my practices are also so much based in critical leftist theory, I also present my works and my creative works in conferences and workshops. And I've been in after New York NYU Cinema Studies Conference in New York this year. Also last year, I organized this conference called Moving Away from Post-Socialism, Reconceptualizing Scholarly Approaches to Contemporary Eastern Europe and Eurasia through Feminist and Queer Theory Lenses. I also had this public lecture called Reappropriating Toxicity together with this amazing artist that you might know, Mary Magic, in Rupert Residency in Vilnius. Also feminisms in transnational perspective art, artivism, and other transformative practices in Croatia. 15th annual feminist theory workshop in Duke University, Durham, where it was also like the first time that I crossed through New York and fell in love and decided to make my way here. I was also part of Rethinking Animality conference in Santiago de Compostela, and I started my kind of theoretical endeavors in International Feminist Gathering in Kaunas in 2018. I'm also tutoring for Rupert's alternative education program in Lithuania from 2021. So I did it 2021, 2022, and this summer. And I also kind of came up with this workshop that I offered in Skopje, North Macedonia, called Critical Matter and Matters of Critique, Experimental Writing for Feminist and Post-Human Participatory Art Approach. I'm also very happy that we have a non-human participating. This is amazing. Okay, so let's delve into what is Žeimiai Manor House, okay? I have a video and let's hope it's gonna work. It's not made by us, right? It's some tourists who are coming, look at the space. Of course, there are a lot of tourists, right? They're taking drones and filming us, so it's never really a private place to live, as you could imagine. And this is the main house that you see from both sides. We have columns, we have stairs. It's a huge territory, 13 hectares that we have. And this is the barn that you see on the right side, where we host our workshops and seminars, and 30 people can also live up there. It's a kind of small and post-Soviet, semi-secluded place in the middle of Lithuania. It has just 1,000 inhabitants, and I think it's going down, of course. But so far it's a beautiful town. In Soviet times, it was really flourishing. It had their own cinema, cultural center, kindergarten, schools, and so on. So this is the overview of Žeimiai as a town. And I think we can stop here. I'm also not so good with technical things, so just be with me. Where did this thing go? Yes, good. So, Aikas Žado Laboratory is a contemporary art device constructed in Žeimiai Manor House. Aikas Žado Laboratory organizes individually collaborative artwork by the artist Domas Noreika, whom I'm going to present shortly, and myself, as well as communal artwork. Part of its programs are administered, coordinated, and developed by the Aikas Žado Association, of which I'm also the head of. The main activities of a laboratory are practical experiments related to the management of cultural heritage objects and the combination of discoveries, methods, techniques, and knowledge in the fields of contemporary art, science, and culture. The main principles of a laboratory's activities are illustrated by the application of conservation, prevention, and restoration systems in the Žeimiai Manor House. At the laboratory, we collect and test historical materials, organize scientific research and exhibitions, and present cognitive expeditions that showcase specific solutions and methods of turning Žeimiai Manor House into a contemporary artwork itself. And how it works of turning this house into contemporary artwork itself, I'm gonna tell you soon. But first I wanna, of course, present all of us. So Domas Noreika is an interdisciplinary artist and a restorator, an initiator of biomineralizational restoration in Lithuania. He's the first one, and also the founder of Aikas Žado Laboratory. He works with crip methodologies in areas such as restoration, geology, biochemistry, and microbiology. He conducts experiments with 18th century materials and technologies, as well as working with the idea of an invisible man in calcium carbonate, media, biotic crip environments. Don't worry, we'll get there. His artworks were shown in solo and group exhibitions in Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, Belgium, Italy, England, and Germany. Aušra Vismantaitė is an independent researcher, graphic designer, and curator of artistic, social, and agricultural projects living in between Lithuania and Mexico. She is responsible for the practices of eco-thought in our house. Tadas Noreika is an independent farmer and natural winemaker. He is responsible for intertextual development of Žeimiai Manor House, which you could imagine is a lot of work. And Enrika Stanulevičiūtė is a fashion photographer and a visual artist, and she's responsible for the documentation of Žeimiai Manor House and all the pictures and videos that we get through after all of the events and exhibitions. Okay, so our collective is concerned with the characteristics of local material and matter, Our practices embody care and forms of interdependence, human, non-human, artificial, and inanimate. The ecosystem of our practices is always in flux, always in flow. By working in a manner, we deal with both the retelling of a history of holes, fissures, which probably you saw that there are a lot of holes, like metaphorical and real, right? And the process of also patching the fissured history. We work while applying the colonial and queer crip feminist lenses and try to develop the ideas of collaboration, collectivism, and communication in the ways that could be interested not only for art professionals but also for local community, which is very important for us. History, right? So a little more than 20 years ago, in the late 90s, so 1999, I would say, Domas Noreika, who I presented a little bit, who later studied painting at the Vilnius Academy of Fine Arts, entered the Žeimiai Manor House. Having lived in the manor house since 2000, and at that time it was without no windows and no doors and no nothing and full of trash, he began the hard work of difficult heritage, day by day facing the incompatible suggestions of what to do with the manor house by the others. Not intending to restore the manor house with European Union structural funds and turn it into another stuffed animal or a Lego castle, Domas started the already mentioned game of holes and patches. Agnė Bagdžiūnaitė, Aušra Vismantaitė, Tadas Noreika, Darius Subačius, who settled in Žeimiai Manor House, were already involved in these processes too. Later we were joined by Noah Bremer and me. A collective which is based in its ideas on social, cultural, aesthetic and political left thought was formed. We applied the model of conservation toward dealing with our park and buildings. The model is understood and valued as a continuous, never-ending process, and which is very important, in contrast to the result aiming rapid restoration processes followed by the other Lithuanian manor houses. And also, I think it's very important to say that when we started, we always, every day, would get a lot of negative remarks, and the main question of a person who would come to our place would be, you know, it's falling apart and nothing is happening there, and you are spending all your days dealing with this beautiful house, and people come and say, well, when are you going to start something? Is there something going on here? But this year I'm very happy there's a National Heritage Commission. And finally, after, I don't know, for Domas, it was like after 20 years of non-stop difficulties, we were awarded with the best kind of solution, an experimental solution for both artistic and preservatory way of dealing with manor houses. And sadly, other manor houses, as I told you, 80% of them were turned to these Lego castles, so there are no way back for them. But we can continue, so it's good. So basically, where did I stop? Another example also is that, for example, we had a business of the stables, let's call it business, that did not accumulate no money, and we also tried to dismantle the structure of horse and horse rider and question the very culture of riding itself, as our horses were disabled and in the need of constant care. The collective, of course, because you saw some other names that I didn't mention in the collective at the present, mutated and changed, but our vision has always remained the same, to lovingly create a space where full metabolic connection is possible, complex and multi-faced. Also, in words of another Lithuanian critic, Žeimiai Manor House is excellent and seems the only example of relational institutional critique in Lithuania's art. It might be said that Žeimiai Manor House is a private object of cultural heritage whose manoriness is not mimicked or recreated by its owners as it is habitual in other manor houses, but it is rather created from anew. In Žeimiai Manor House, as a cultural center of 1,000 inhabitants, art education, exhibitions, festivals are taking place, films are shown, residents come from abroad. However, this institution is permanently asking itself, what is the heritage, the exhibition, the artist organizer, the celebration, the archive, and how to talk about it. Just checking the time. Yes, so through embodying collectivity and sustainability at Aikas Žado Laboratory, we constantly try to understand the cyclical nature of flora and fauna. And we're going to go to theory a little bit more. And the relationships between each of us, the common inseparable link, or as Guattari calls it, the balance system. loopback cycles and loops, nonlinear affiliations and relations. So when we claim that the horses that we used to keep are not for riding, that we allow our chickens the freedom of their walks, when we leave the fields of nettles and other wild plants to create meadows or other sorts of outgrowings, we aim not for a sensational obsession, but for a more than empathy-based respect. Understanding that we are all together enmeshed in a complex of biosocial and political relations, and that certain plants and other beings, of course, are carefully nurtured and others are carefully exterminated, we seek to encourage the territory to create itself as the living creatures are left to express their agency, awareness, and responsiveness. Hence, in the periphery of Aikas Žado Laboratory, we endeavor to abandon the exclusion between nature and culture, as well as sometimes imaginative lacunas separating city and province. So in our laboratory's practice, being with a living being is first of all a question of self-knowledge and self-actualization. We ask, how much can I get to know that living being, and how much can I know about myself through that living being? Therefore, for us, to get to know the living being means to encounter many other living beings, at the same time encountering oneself. We are inspired by the thoughts of Harlan Weaver, who argues for the complexity of identities that human and non-human animals jointly and intersectionally enmesh in a flowing, non-static, processual becoming he names becoming in kind. In this becoming in kind, he connects ontological stakes with larger social words. It is a way of thinking through categories such as species, breed, race, class, and gender. Hence, at the Žeimiai Manor House, we love disruptively. It is a certain type of uneasy love of a difference, based in restorative justice and an understanding of how human and non-human relation is mutually shaped by intersection of racism, classism, sexism, and speciesism. In other words, the human and non-human relation in Aikas Žado Laboratory is a different possibility for becoming kind, while continuously encouraging disruption. So we are gradually becoming that cat sleeping on the old wooden manor floor, that bacteria on the furthest corner of a wall, or that tomato thriving in the unweeded vegetable garden. So our programs, not that it's going to get easier, include Residency OYO, Invisible Man's Cinematheque, Lankesa, and Center of Biomimetic Imagination. And each of the programs, of course, is organically intertwined with one another, as they tend to reflect and grow from one another. And we have Residency OYO, which was started in 2006 by an artist and curator who I already mentioned, Agnė Bagdžiūnaitė. She was also my biggest teacher, I think, and I learned and took so much from her, which I'm always going to be thankful for. So Residency OYO's Residency's program is suited for local and international artists, academics, scientists, and activists. Focused on the creation of transdisciplinary contemporary art, Residency OYO provides the residents with accommodation, creative studio, administrative assistance, and curatorial consultations. Residency OYO's program is guided by collective energies and offers the residents different formats for creative collaboration and public presentations of their creations. Residency OYO seeks to inspire its residents to create various contemporary art scenarios for transformation and expansion of the relations between humans, non-humans, and surrounding environments. And this is a list of the residents we have from 2014. And I think I took over the residency in 2016, yes, with Jessica and Javier's work, which was the first time I curated the program, their performance and their show. But you can also see we had many artists from different places. We had people from Iran, Spain, Lithuania, Denmark, Finland, USA, Germany, Morocco, what I didn't mention, Paris, and so on and so on. And it continues. And also the two projects that I wrote for this year also includes, one of them is the residency project, so we want to put it back in action. So if we're going to get the funding from Lithuanian Cultural Council, we can start it again, and maybe some of you can also apply. Another program which we have is called Lankesa. So from 1984 to 1999, an experimental sewing bar, Lankesa, was operating in Žeimiai Manor House. After the disintegration of the sewing bar in 1999, the entire inventory was left at the disposal of the house. And in 2015, then I came there first time and started my living there. I gathered all those pieces. So basically, having traveled all the building spaces since 2000, they were collected, sorted, and transformed into the installation. And it was my first artwork in a manor house. And also through working there, I also decided to stay in a manor house, let's call it like this. So my vision of the sewing room was an archive that preserves the material memory of this experimental factory. Also later on, okay, maybe I'll show you. So a little bit of pictures. This is how it looks like. And it's also a permanent installation, which was made at that time, and it still continues to be in a house. And I also rethought the fashion a lot. It's a big project, which also led me to kind of my PhD, because when I was doing this project and I was collecting these things, we opened it for public. Also, then it was still in process, and had a lot of women coming from the village. And they were like, oh my God, I was working with this, you know? Like, I was working in this factory. And I understood that so many women still live in a town, the ones that have been working there from 1984 to 1999. And I started to do interviews with them. And these interviews also led me to kind of my wish to look further into the town of Žeimiai, and not just stay with the Žeimiai Manor House, but also to get to know the town and its people. And basically my PhD is called Mothers, Monsters, Machines, Mapping the Gender Apparatuses of Biopolitics in Late Soviet Socialist and Early Post-Soviet Socialist Town of Žeimiai. So basically I'm looking in women experiences, not just the ones that are working in the sewing factory, but the ones who were working in a lot of factories that they're operating during that time, the latest period of Soviet socialism, and until 2004, when we got accepted to European Union, because that really changed the game for us. The other program that we have is Invisible Man Cinematheque. It's a rhizomatic educational cultural project open to individual and collective initiatives. It can be grasped as some sort of alive and critical social media. The establishment of a Cinematheque was initiated by the necessity to acquire the collection of video VHS tapes, which were gifted to the association, to the Aikas Žado Association in 2017, and mostly belong to the Lithuanian Canadian anthropologist and professor Romas Vaštakas. And this is part of the program. So it was the opening of Cinematheque, where you can see how we kind of gathered the VHS, and also this is the amazing sculpture that Donatas Jankauskas, a really famous Lithuanian contemporary artist, created for us, which is also still in the house. And we also made a little book called Video Mass for the Invisible Man Cinematheque, which had really amazing artists and writers involved. And also it was very important for us to present it in Vilnius, not in the manor house. And we presented it on those stairs that later on we knew they're going to be demolished, because this is how in Lithuania we deal with heritage which comes from Soviet Union. And I think it's happening a lot in post-Soviet countries. So we had this video mass talking also about how the architecture and Soviet lines are connecting and what can be done, and maybe also to make it more public and occupy this public space for these readings. This is Valentinas Klimašauskas, amazing Lithuanian curator, so those who know him. This is me reading also. I was there too. We had a lot of also eco-critically charged, how we call it, cinema sessions, which were also part of this Invisible Man Cinematheque, which we would held in a manor house throughout the summer. And the last program is the Center of Biomimetic Imagination, It is a place for practical experiments related to the management of cultural heritage objects, combining the discoveries, methods, techniques, and knowledge of modern art, science, and culture. CBA is based on eco-critical biomimetic theory and practice. The main idea of CBA is to create biomimetic hybrid objects, sculptures, and installations while working through feminist, posthumanist, queer, and decolonial lenses and make them accessible to the public. CBA is based on crip materiality. So basically, now we are jumping to the last section on which I want to give my time on. And so crip methodology. And the ideas for the solo exhibition, which I call Si-bioarchitecture to walk in conversation of ghosts, revolve around the works of critical disability theoreticians, namely Cooley, Ingvald, Guffey, Garland, Thomas, Caffer, and Taylor. In the exhibition, I wish to pay special attention to the conceptualization of the crip materiality theory, which has just started to be applied as a conceptual approach to both create and perceive contemporary art, but which I believe has been the basis of the entire conceptual axis and practices of the Aikas Žado Laboratory since its first establishment as NGO Arts Community in 2002. Processuality, procedural architecture, as I argued before, which we call Si-bioarchitecture, is important to us. Our bioperformative installations operating in the Aikas Žado Laboratory, a contextual architectural work of art through which the potential to speak from the local bioarchitectural position of the Žeimiai Manor or GUT about global social, economic, cultural heritage preservation and conservation and more geopolitical problems, which I call brain. And to dive more into crip methodology, I think I would like this person, Robert McClure, who is an American theorist and who has contributed to fields in transnational queer and disability studies, to talk more about what is crip. So he could introduce you to the concept itself, and then we can move, when getting to know what is crip, to move to what is crip materiality. So McClure is known as being one of the founding scholars involved in forming the field of queer disability studies, particularly for a theoretical outlook known as crip theory.
Also, something that we're in the project of inventing, but crip theory is a multifaceted analytic, again, for approaching culture from a perspective that centers disabled experiences, embodiments, and movements. I think that crip theory has often been
recording stopped
by queer crips, though it is, of course, an analytic that is.
I have to put it back.
Recording
right?
in progress.
Not gonna touch the chat. Thought somebody has questions, you don't want to check, because usually nobody does that.
Think that from the work of, say, Eli Clare or Carrie Sandoll on, crip theory has had a real resonance for queer crips who were looking for languages that were similar to the languages of queerness. And queerness, what does it do? It describes the slipperiness of desire and sexuality and affection and interactions that are bodily interactions about desire. Queerness captures all of that. I think crip theory ended up and has been something very appealing for queer crips because it also talks about the slipperiness of embodiment and the inadequacy of that binary, able-bodied, disabled, for describing how we think and move and experience embodiment and behave and so forth. So I think that there's a way in which crip theory is to disability studies, what queer theory is to lesbian and gay studies. Both projects are sort of absolutely central and absolutely needed, but are doing slightly different work. One thing that I think crip theory does that's slightly different work is play with identity in new kinds of ways. So if disability studies often has been about affirming in absolutely central and important ways disability identity, crip theory is about sort of working with identity and against it simultaneously. So identity becomes both something that we take on and use politically, but also resist for many reasons, not least the need to forge coalitions across multiple identities. So those are some of the things that crip theory is. Ableism functions similarly to its cousins, homophobia, racism, sexism. On a basic level, ableism is about sort of forms of exclusion that get codified and naturalized in various systems of power. So I would be in the camp that doesn't see ableism as just about individual opinions, though certainly people have individual opinions that are discriminatory towards people with disabilities. But I think most theorists of ableism, I'm thinking of someone like Fiona Kamari Campbell here, most theorists of ableism would see it as sort of built into the structures of our society. So basically the ways in which, obviously most literally, architecture functions, but also systems of education, media, our ways of speaking, all of those are sort of put in place for an able-bodied world, and often sort of naturalize able-bodiedness as though that were the sort of only way to be as a human being, which of course is not the case, nor is it even the case for the majority of bodies and minds. So we've sort of idealized as an ableist culture a mode of being that very few people can ever actually embody or inhabit. That's a good question. If you think about what I just said about ableism's cousins, what are the reasons for racism? What are the reasons for sexism? What are the reasons for homophobia? On some basic level, a powerful group in each case has benefited from the privileges of a system that gives them more power. So sexism is a form of not only exclusion but oppression of women, and that system has benefited men. Ableism comes from the attempt of certain groups of people to shore up their power and to exclude others.
Okay, let's stop here. Okay, so I think now you're more familiar with this if you haven't been before. And there was this amazing book just published very recently, 2002, by Jessica Cooley. It's called Introducing Crip Materiality, Mad Objects and Soft Screw. And she introduces this crip materiality. So basically she says like that crip materiality thinks with and accounts for the material structures of art and architecture and the curatorial and conservation discourses attendant to them by calling out and questioning the eugenic ideology that requires art objects and architecture to maintain a level of fitness that adheres to the ableist standards of stability, strength, and rationality. So basically she brings it to art and architecture, the crip to the art and architecture. So also crip materiality asks these questions, which we also want to ask in our exhibition. How do we account for the pervasive nature of ableism that impacts all things at the material level? Can we talk about disability in art even if the artist does not identify as disabled, even if the subject matter is not explicitly about disability, identity, or culture, nor does it stylistically represent disability? Crip materiality takes the art objects that are marked as dead or as immoral in the case of inherent vice, and intervenes to claim them as crip and offers them a place of belonging, a radical welcome. Crip materiality is about how to create support structures for those objects and narratives that are deemed disposable. And now I want you to see my colleagues talk and present our work through crip materiality, working in collaboration with materials and learning from materials, which we do and which we did for 2 decades that with the work of Donos. It's, how to say, the subtitles for it are random, you know, but I went through it twice. It's kind of good. Just it's gonna be in Lithuanian, so you'll need to read the read the subtitles, but let's see, let's hope it's gonna work. And maybe
study music theory, harmony, and ear training online with Berkeley's renowned faculty. Download your free
And this was part of a really nice program organized by one really nice Lithuanian philosopher, Kristupas Savolius, and it's called Menininkai kaip mokslininkai, means artists as scientists, and it's basically the group that is targeted with those videos that also another other Lithuanian artist did is for students. Literally for high school students to get to know these kind of interesting experimental approaches to arts and how we can also maybe do that in their futures. Yeah, it's called Creative School, creativeschool.lt.
Baigęs Vilniaus dailės akademijos studijas, modernią tapybą, įkūriau Aikas Žado Laboratoriją. Aikas Žado Laboratorija yra tokia kaip ir aiški nuoroda į mokslinį kontekstą, bet šiuo metu dirbu.
Do you see it like this? If it's with green line, not really, no? Like...
Su meno projektais ir man ta Aikas Žado Laboratorija yra eksperimentinis apskritai meno.
I don't know how to... Maybe this is okay, right? Then I don't need to...
Suvokimo ir kažkokio patyrimo, konstravimo modelis. Kas čia yra tokio, sakykime, įdomaus man pačiam, tai yra tas bendravimas su skirtingais, labai skirtingų disciplinų atstovais. Tai laboratorijoje šiandieną konstruoju, kaip čia pasakyti, savo patyrimą su šalia dirbančiais restauratoriais, mokslininkais, kitais menininkais. Kas man tikrai labai įdomu, esu užsikrėtęs tokia idėja, tyrinėju kalcio karbonatus. Kalcio karbonatai šiandien man kaip menininkų yra tiesiog atradimas, suteikia gyvenimą kažkokį tai potencialą judėti kūrybiškai. Visi turbūt žinom, kalcio karbonatas yra dviejų cheminių elementų junginys. Tai kalcio oksidas ir anglies dioksidas. Tai anglies dioksidas yra atmosferoje bespalvės dujos, pasiruošęs prisijungti prie savęs. Sakykime, tą kalcio oksidą tiesiog pristatysiu, yra akmenėlis, šiuo atveju tai yra dolomitas, bet tai yra natūraliai randami dalykai, natūraliai randamos uolienos, kurios jau yra kalcio karbonatiniai daliniai. Aš suvokiu kalcio karbonatus kaip mediumus savo kūryboje, tai yra savotiška terpė, kuri aplimpa ir turi ir socialinį savo konstrukcinį tokį potencialą ir, aišku, kitas medžiagas, mikroorganizmus. Čia mano rankose dabar yra istorinis kalcio karbonato tešlos gabalėlis, kaip ir aš vadinu, tas tikrasis mediumas, bet tai yra restauratorių tyrimo objektas. Ir dėl ko aš pasakoju šiandieną apie tos kalcio karbonatus, tai, kaip sakiau, gyvenu istoriniam objekte, kuriam įkūręs esu tą eksperimentinę laboratoriją. Natūraliai gyvena tarp senų sienų, tas kalcio karbonatas, jisai tiesiog tau miegant ar dirbant, jisai visur tavo smegenyse. Yra tokia istorija, kad, sakykime, senas pastatas turi savo seną vertę tiek autentišką prasme, kad tol, kol yra senos sienos, turi savo autentišką medžiagą, išlaiko savo autentišką charakterį. Tai va, sakykime, čia turiu patį seniausią dvare rastą pagrindinį stiuko gabaliuką, kurio sudėtyje ir yra tas kalcio, magnio oksidai, yra silicio dioksidai, yra kiti elementai, bet vienas iš tokių įdomesnių radinių, kad čia yra baltyminės kilmės proteinas, kazeino baltymas. Kalcio karbonato mediumai, istoriniai mediumai, kuriais domisi restauratoriai, tai yra specialūs tyrimai. Tie tyrimai, sakykime, cheminiai, granulometriniai, laboratoriniai tyrimai parodo tų baltymų senųjų sudėtis. Tose sudėtyse pagal kiekvieno pastato charakteristikas ten randa įvairias organinės medžiagas, jas nustato, bet dažniausiai tai yra vis tiek pagrindas kalcio karbonatas. Yra kiti kalcio karbonatai, kuriuos jau dabar aš pats kuriu. Tie kalcio karbonatai tai man yra reikalingi tam, iš vienos pusės, kad turėtume atsarginį variantą, kai tiesiog sienos gabalas iškrenta, kad turėtume tokį mediumą, kurį galima būtų į tą sieną integruoti, protezuoti, užplombuoti prarastą istorinį plyšį. Tai skirtumas tarp šitų dalykų yra labai didžiulis, sakykime, sukonstruoti naują tinko gabaliuką šiandieną ir daugybę, kaip čia pasakyti, industrinių priedų, parduotuvių, kurios pardavėjai, kurie parduoda gatavus ir baigtus tos gabalus ir tešlas ar ingredientus. Bet mano modelis, mano supratimas, kad svarbiausia dalis tai yra pagrįstas laboratoriniais tyrimais ir kitokiom išvadom autentiškų gabalų likutinių verčių tyrimas. Ir, sakykime, va čia va tos ištrupos, kurios yra istorinės, jas įterpti kažkokį tai gabalą, kuris šiandieną pardavėjo sukonstruotas ir be aiškių rodmenų yra sudėtinga. Ką aš noriu pasakyti, kad, sakykime, restauratoriai 80 metais darydami dvare projektą naudojo cementinius užkabinius. Reiškia, po 40 metų mes tiesiog restauraciją ir visą šitą nukrapštam, kaip nekokybišką restauraciją. Matom, kad tiesiog pastatui buvo padaryta jau negrįžtama žala. Ne dėl to, kad tiesiog gamta, tiesiog aplinka veikia pastatą, bet tiesiog, kad atėjo kažkokie žmonės, kurie turėjo tam tikrų tikslų pagražinti šitą vietą. Ir reguliariai tiesiog pagreitino kalcio karbonato irimo procesus tose sienose. Tai kad to nedaryti, tų klaidų nekartoti, šiandien aš turiu aistrą kolekcionuotas kalcio karbonatus ir gaminti juos, kurie būtent stipriai, glaudžiai arba adekvačiai susijęs su senom likutiniam vertėm. Dabar yra kitas aspektas, tai yra kalcio karbonatiniai mediumai, tešlos arba rinkiniai, kuriuos aš pats su kolegom bandom sukurti dabar. Jau nebėra to istorinio momento, kai tai nėra rastas, o yra dabar kūriamas kažkokio medijom daiktas. Tai va čia yra įdomumas, kad, sakykime, čia mano vienas iš pirmųjų pavyzdžių bandymas atlieti laiptų sugriuvusio kuoliuko elementą, kuris taip ir pavyko. Pirmas bandymas, jisai turi labai didelį poringumą senelių, nelygumą, jo iš vieno kuoliuko, kuris turėjo gautis gavus 5 detalės. Tai yra pirmasis bandymas. Kas čia yra blogai, sakykime, tuose pirmuose bandymuose, tai tas, sakykime, tave inspiruoja, jeigu tu surandi tą formulę, kas ten buvo blogai, inspiruoja kurti tos geresnius kalcio karbonato rinkinius. Tai čia mano pirmas bandymas buvo bandytas su tą mūsų labai mano mylimos kaimynės Laimos varške. Tai Laimos varškė, jinai turi karvę, čia auga ta karvė mūsų, gamyklose auga mūsų šieną, žolę, pamedžia kibiriuką pieno, tas kibiriukas varškės pavidalu ateina pas mane ant stalo ir aš tą varškę, sakykime, tyrinėju. Tai pasigaminti mano pirmieji kazeino grūdeliai nepavyko, sakykime, aš perkaitinau. Man gavosi perkaitintas baltymas, menkavertis baltymas ir man nepavyko labai taip stipriai suklijuoti tarpusavį, sakysim, tų silicio dioksido elementų, kurie dalyvauja kartu kompozicijoje. Norėjau sukurti dirbtinį polietileną. Tai, sakykime, čia gavosi tai, kad bedirbdamas atsitiktinai, čia tiesiog, žinot, kaip, sakykime, turiu didelį žinojimą, baigęs daug universitetų ir tiesiog pradedi, tau kažkas gaunasi, nesigauna. Man tiesiog iš mano klaidų čia dalykai eina. Tai aš tiesiog pradėjau mano pirmi bandymai su kazerino miltais, pradėjau daryti daug mėginių, prisidariau visą kambarį įvairių tirpalų. Iš tų tirpalų keliuose aš pastebėjau, kad formuojasi labai gražios plėvelės. Ir, aš sakau, čia dirbtinis polietilenas. Tai kaip meno kūrinys, sakykime, eksponuojant, kuriant kokią nors meno instaliaciją, aš dabar galiu jau naudoti savo polietilenais. Tais vadinamais savo polietilenais aš padariau kitą atradimą, kad, sakykime, jeigu auga mikroorganizmai ant paviršiaus, ypač lauko turėklose, tai man buvo taip, kad tiesiog sudužo vienas indelis kazeinų tirpalų. Tie tirpalai iškaito saulėje ir aš tiesiog, vos neapsiverkiau, kad sudužo ten tie mėginiai, bet aš kitą dieną atėjau, supratau, kad čia yra geras dalykas, nes aš atsargiai nulupdamas tą plėvelę, supratau, kad visi mikroorganizmai prilimpa prie tos plėvelės ir viskas nusilupo, man atsivėrė švari kalcio karbonatinis eksterjeros tiukinės kvadratūros tokia erdvė. Ir tada buvo galima sulašinti nano dulkių tirpalų ir uždaryti poras ir mes dabar turim tą vietą išvalytą turėklą nuo mikroorganizmų. Yra tiesiog iš mikrobiologijos schemos ateina tokie tyrimai į kalcio karbonatą, kad ieškomi mikroorganizmai, kurie precipituoja kalcio karbonatą. Tai reiškia, nusodina kalcio karbonatą. Ir yra įvairūs grybai arba bakterijos, kurios, sakykime, turim tam tikrą aplinką, sugeba precipituoti kalcio karbonatą, tai taip paprastai tariant, sakykime, jeigu mes turime, čia yra, aš tiesiog parodysiu, gražus XIX amžiaus eksterjerinio striuko, kaip aš sakau, gali būti, kad patentuotas yra tam tikri elementai Londone šitas striuko. Mes turime tokį sutrukinėjusi, tarsi su pačiužant sušaižytą ledo paviršių. Ir čia yra tokie striuko laiko randai, kad vis tiek veikia atmosferą. Tai va tie laiko randai, sakykime, tai yra ne žmogaus sukeltas tas trukinėjimas, tai yra tikras, autentiškas senumo procesas. Ir, sakykime, jeigu pavyktų ir pasiteisintų šitie tyrimai su mikrobiologija, tai mes tiesiog turėtume organizmus, kuriuos tiesiog apgyvendintume sienose. Jie atliktų restauratorius iš principo darbą, jie sutvirtintų arba užpildytų, užaugintų naują kalcitą tose trukinėjimus. Tai čia būtų šitai stulbinantis atradimas. Šiaip liaudiškai čia vadinama tiesiog tinkai, gydantis patys save, sakykime. Čia yra kita istorija, kaip gyvūnus ir žmogaus dalis naudojant kalcio karbonatas. Tikrai galbūt ir negražu būtų čia taip kalbėti, bet sakykime, iš tokios antžmogiškos perspektyvos, tai yra taip, kad kasant gruntą visur yra galima rasti kaulų, dantų, skeletų įvairių sumalus. Mes visada turime tas vadinamas želatinas ir, sakykime, viduje, interjeruose, beveik kiekvienam polichromijos sluoksne mes turime kalcio karbonatą sukabintą su kaulinėm struktūrom. Ir tas yra, kai tu tą žinai, tai, sakykime, čia yra medžioklės trofėjų kambarys ir tu žinai, kad jisai yra sukabintas dar pats dažas iš įvairių kaulų struktūrų. Tu žinai, kad tu gyveni architektūroje, kuri turi kažkokią jau moralinį imperatyvą. Tu pradedi galvoti, ar tikrai nėra pakaitalų, kuriuos galima, sakykime, pakeisti šiandien, galbūt saugomi, graunėlės ir gamtą. Ir kalcio karbonatas, pavyzdžiui, man visada jis jau turi tam tikrą tokį, kaip čia pasakyti, mentalinį užtaisą, kad tu turi atsakyti tam tikrus klausimus. Jau, sakykime, kai mes kalbam apie anglies dioksidą, kuris visada nori prilimpa prie kalcio oksido. Tai čia dar atsiranda kažkokie gyvūnai, kurie būtinai buvo anksčiau įterpiami į tą kalcio karbonatą.
So also how we deal with this, we deal with this and we call it disability aesthetics, which embraces beauty that seems by traditional standards to be broken, and yet it is not less beautiful, but more so as a result, and it comes also from Tobin Sieber's writings on disability aesthetics. So basically in this solo exhibition, Si-bioarchitecture to walk in conversation of ghosts, by employing crip materiality as both method and tactic, we hope to present a selection of Aikas Žado Laboratory's works which particularly address disability and intersectional thinking. In the space of a gallery, we imagine to recreate one room from Žeimiai Manor House or its part and exhibit mixed media artworks and objects, created calcium carbonate pieces, artificial polytelia, paintings, and so on, which reveal the material non-compliance and help to imagine our shapes and identities in a non-normative way, emphasizing the particularity of varying lived embodiments. In this way, with the solo exhibition, we aim to challenge conventional modes of viewing and interpretation of an art object's physical ability and agency. So we kind of claim for Žeimiai Manor House as a crip house, rethinking manor-ness. The keywords for the exhibition would be material non-compliance, human-non-human bonding, crip feminist queer, discharge and leakage, and new worlding. Other galleries and art centers which have in the past few years worked with the concept of crip, but not crip materiality, include ISCA and Serpentine in London, Gallery 400 in Chicago, Doris McCarthy Gallery in Toronto, Canada, Museum für Moderne Kunst, Frankfurt, Germany. And these are just some things that we are thinking of by recreating the room in the gallery and also using all the sorts of objects that Thomas showed and that we also have throughout the house. Because all the myths, and in our drawings we also rethink the historical ways of what was really shown on the walls in the manor houses. So you will find like crypt figures and interesting rethinkings that are coming from very like decolonial and feminist and eco thought. So this is also like one piece on a wall that we did, and you can see here like these animals were the animals that we found in the chimney, and we have the boy posing and not the woman. There's also our queer friend, and we have all the kind of shadows of glasses picked up and painted in a 1817, 1819, it depends which kind of wall we're trying to recreate mode, but depicting what kind of different kind of stories to tell. So you can see like the shape-wise and how to say like, how is this word? Like form, it is in a size and in a scope of how it should be. And maybe you saw like in Vienna, in Berlin, anywhere, like in the old houses, they have these kind of mural paintings, but they're never depicting something that is already broken or shattered or not really full or able-bodied, right? And we have very interesting archives that could travel, also depicting the kind of stair handles that are already broken and not full and not, as one could imagine, you know, like the fancy ages of manor house. So we're thinking the manor-ness. Also, Thomas is a great painter. He finished his studies as a painter, and now he got a restorer's diploma. So we have a lot of rethinkings on crip and crip materiality already in his paintings. This is a very interesting object also. We call it the last finger of Medeksha, and Medeksha and Kostokovsky were the owners of the manor house before for centuries, you know, the last bourgeoisie families. So this is the last finger of Medeksha. And also this is bacteria that we work. And basically then Thomas was telling in his talk about these healing plasters. So basically this is why we were also gifted this, I don't know how to say this, diploma this year, because this Bacillus pumpillus really work and they really fill the cracks in the manor house. So basically we are really working with non-human and there is no separation like human and non-human is. Yeah. So these are some examples that I found, that I gathered, and also like we have tons of these. They are not yet confirmed, which it's gonna depend on the space that we're gonna get. And I think with that I'm kind of finishing it, and also saying that you can find more information about us on Instagram and also on our page. On my page also for curatorial work, because I still didn't went through the curated exhibitions that I did for the manor house, so you can find them there. Also the text, and you can understand what kind of thematics we also work with. And usually the exhibition are also kind of, you know how the residency ends, so the residents come, they are there, they work, they create work, and also we include that work in a solo or group exhibitions. And also you can read about us too, if you want to know more and understand more, especially on EcoThought. I kind of wrote a lot about us. And also just to compare, so you wouldn't leave with this question, you know, probably nothing is happening there. So this is how it looks now, and this is how it was before. Yeah. Thank you for your time and your patience, and that's it. And welcome. Oh yes, I am putting these also these pictures that I promised. Show it like this. Thank you so much for coming. If somebody needs to leave, of course you can leave, you know. This is just a fun part, you know. Questions and answers and discussions. And also I'm thinking to go for a coffee after, so if you want to join me, please. And these are just random pictures from our lives. Some are from the shows that we have, some are from the, like, just the daily lives that we live.
All in the manor?
All in the manor, yes. Everything in the manor. Yes, please do.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I really like the idea of like the manor house being like a laboratory. I think somehow it's just like, in some way, it just like follows the references and ideas of the laboratory as it being a breeding or incubating space for like artistic talents, and it breeds like a materiality, and it allows you to really invest your idea energy into developing the more ideas, and it's more like acts and becoming. But I think in the sense it's also like a counter laboratory, in the sense that it's not really it's not like a sterilized field. It doesn't really clean, doesn't really present a really sterilized field of like for examination of things. It doesn't like really slice up things, and it preserve everything in its sheer materiality, in its sheer volume. And I wonder, can you expand on what you think of the laboratory side of it?
It's an interesting question, yeah. I don't know, it was kind of the name, but just, the title to put, because before that we were operating in so many, Aikas Žado was always there. So Aikas Žado is also a semantical game, because A from Ž is the last letter. It goes further than Z in Lithuanian language. So everything that semantically you can involve from A to Z, it's kind of a game. Everything is a game for us. We were too mystical also for a very long time, and maybe that's why I love laboratory, because for me it's like alchemical laboratory, like in alchemy, those prior times of laboratories of nowadays, like modernized and sterilized and so on and so on. It's more like experimental, It's so that's why it's more alchemical for me. Because before we used to call ourselves Aikas Žado Museum Live, then Aikas Žado Living Museum. And then we were like, no, museum is like something stagnant, right? Something that is already in, especially if you're not applying crip materiality, you're only allowing very much able-bodied art objects in museums. And each of the objects that have some kind of, how the Cooley calls it, inheritance-wise, right? They end up being in archives, being in rooms filled of pieces that are not, good enough or fit enough to be shown. So it's kind of, for us, this laboratory, it allows us to misfit also. That's another thing that I think all our practices we're doing for 20 years when Dama started it. It's about misfitting, really. But through misfitting, fitting in, you know what I mean? Because we are kind of reversing this idea of fitting and misfitting. So yeah, so laboratory is more like alchemical laboratory for me. Which is where these experiments are allowed, and not judged. And and as Dama said, most of our things came really, through mistakes, and some mistakes were the best, so we also really embody this failure. Failure is something that keeps us moving. Don't know if I answered.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you see, for example, I see that you import ideas that happen in other cultures, which is, we're all doing this in art, but how do you feel, you're talking about this misfit and fitting, how do you feel ideas that are conceived in societies that are so different from Lithuania itself, how that works when it lands in your platform, and how does discussions go over pieces of thinking that are not directly developed from that reality?
But I would like to ask you for some example, because I think all the theoretical approaches that we have are could be seen in the locale of Žeimiai Manor House even.
You feel like it's integrated?
I feel that it's integrated because, I don't know, the lenses that I talked through was the eco-thought that we really practice, and it's not a project for us. It's kind of really a continuous practice, right, of how we deal with someone that is not human in our space. The same goes with queer. We were first place also to held the first queer festival in Lithuania, and we got beaten up by the village boys, really.
In Brazil we did too.
Yes.
I guess everybody was.
Yeah. So, and we also have queer people staying with us, and also then, for example, you can see it's beautiful. So everybody wants to take their pictures there. For example, weddings, and we were like, oh my God, we really don't want weddings, and we don't want these photo sessions, but we thought okay, we created the most difficult questionnaire, where we would ask, what do you think about homelessness? Where does it come from? Do you agree if a queer person would participate with you on the same space? Would you what do you think about, I don't know, war there and there? So kind of this leftist, really our practices in the questions that really can help us even not to get money, for example. But we didn't care because for us these theories were stronger. You know, like these theories that our practices and our beliefs. And basically then you also kind of pick the people who do agree with you and not that they agree with you, but they do not stand where you don't stand in social political stances just because they could like maybe financially a little bit support you. And we also had these things where people could not just pay with money but pay with their labor. So for example, a photo session would cost them 2 days of I don't know, taking leaves and helping us and also getting to know each other and working together, or painting walls or painting windows, or I don't know, whatever. It's like full of work. Yeah, I went a little bit too far with this, I think. But yeah, so yeah, but we practice this, and maybe you mean if we're thinking about decolonialism. Yeah, but decolonialism is the same thing that needs to happen in Lithuania in a way of we were under Tsar regime, we were under Soviet Union. It's a different kind of colonialism, but it's another topic because like what is said in academia also, that what Russia is a colonial power. It's just that it is an internal colonialism, because colonies are understood as something that you have over the seas or over the ocean, but not necessarily. So I think we have to deal, and we're dealing with that. And especially Manor House saw it all. It was built in 1770. It went through bourgeoisie alive to really then these bourgeoisie people were put in trains and sent to Siberia. And they never really came back because it became in Soviet times like, I would say, a really beautiful thing too also, and very social. It became a school. It became flats for teachers. It was, I don't know, a place where people would have their weddings also, you know, like a matriculation center or something like this. So yeah, there are a lot of different periods there. Also with bourgeoisie, it's a lot of racism, it's a lot of class issues. So it's all there. I mean, it's just all around. It's just that I think our practices are based on that we really wanted to look at it and not to, how to say, turn away from all this that does surround us and impacts our lives, I think. Thank you for.
So it is kind of a sport, or a little bit curatorial, like curatorial to be there. How does this, like?
It is a private property. It is owned by Damas family. So Damas is one owner. There are 3 more. But to not have issues with them, we signed agreement that they gave the rights for Damas as well, including for the association Aikas Žado to run it for a certain time, and then we will need to renew it. That means that it's under our collective's decisions.
Use, not owning, but use. So you're using.
Use, yes.
You have
yes.
the right to use it.
Yes, 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 yeah. But without owning it, it's also the only home I have, where you
But
can
you
really
also
say it's
live
my home.
there, right? So you
Yes.
Yes. God living, and because when we look at these walls and all of like you're talking about living with bacteria, you're literally living in a house.
Oh yeah, we are living with bacteria.
It's like you don't renew this. You live with this together. So I found this really interesting because if it was not a lab but like a living space, you would like to refresh the walls. Have it more kind of good for your health because this doesn't sometimes look like warm in the winter, good for your health to inhale. So how does this affect you? Because it definitely does.
I have a cold allergy now from the Manor House, but it's been interesting winters that I spent there. Some very cold, some very warm, It depends also on our, financial things. Now it's really good. Now I'd say it's really, really good. And also, don't make me mistake. If a wall is not in sterile white or anything, it doesn't mean it's not clean. It's also we use alcohol, we sterilize. Of course, I think with our residents, we are very aware to say that, look, if you have some allergies, better let us know now, because it's gonna happen something, you know, and because, yeah, it's, but you know, like, I'm healthy, I've been good, and I mean, I am more sick than I am somewhere else, rather than I'm there, so no complaints, you know.
But for instance, did you have to review the ceiling, the roof, stuff that, you know, cannot be left?
Yes, I mean, in some places, of course, because also I saw the situation, you know, when Damas came, it was like full of trash, the main house, and there were no windows, no glasses, no doors, no nothing. So of course, because and then you started only with one room, and then the kitchen and the bathroom, just like to start from somewhere and like, you know, work forward. But I saw that situation in Kumetinas. It's a workers' house where also we recreated these 3 separate flats. And this is how it used to be for the workers' families who worked in the fields. But it's the warmest place now in winter. So you have 3 kind of studios that also we give to our residents. And it's in constant work. Of course, it's a huge estate. So, you know, something works, something doesn't work. You know, you can like, you know, start on one side of a manor house, you finish, then you can start again. So it's like, but that's how I'm saying, like the process is more important for us than, than some sort of result of what. That's what we also ask, result of what, you know. And you saw Damas, he's very much, very good storyteller, amazing, you know, and also very much enthusiastic, and he will never stop. Yeah.
This is more of just something like a comment almost. But in the last video we watched, there was a bit about how in the restoration process, when you use like cement or like plaster, it actually speeds up the decay of the building itself, right?
Yeah.
Like that for me was really interesting. When you think about a situation here with like the repaving of the roads, so like when there's potholes in the road,
Yeah.
the type of material that's used to like pave over is cheaper than others, but it means that it's like very temporary. So that's why, you know, in Bushwick, especially on Marshall Avenue, they're like repaving the road constantly, and the potholes appear in the same place as the previous potholes, however many months later. So it's like completely not sustainable, but it kind of plays into what he was saying about like time, so, you know, like speeding up a restorative process, and when you think about like human time in contrast to geological time. So like the chemical processes that he's talking about. And I just think time in all of this is kind of interesting, thinking about slippage as well. So we're talking about like queerness, crip theory, like time obviously comes up a lot in both of those theories, I think, like at the intersection. And I guess, yeah, I'm just sort of commenting and feeding back bits that I was like interested in, because you do have this building, and as you were saying, it points to so many different histories, so many different like time periods. Everyone's also arriving with their own ideas of times or histories and places, as you were speaking to. And yeah, I guess there's also the interest in that in relation to like chemical processes, just thinking about geological time versus human time and how that plays into like capitalism or neoliberalism, so speeding up of time, and maybe there's a resistance to that in this place.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was perfect summary. Yeah, I think we are thinking about time, but without thinking about it, you know, like it thinks, just, of course it's there, it's much more slow, but we're not in a rush of anything, but it's also, it's beautiful to see. I don't know, I don't think there is anything more beautiful in life when, you know, like then we also planted plants also, like, you know, trees. And then you plant something, you know, 5 years ago, and you see this, like you planted something very little, and that baby grew, and also without no pesticides, because we don't use it. at all. So it's really nice, and also we have bees, so it's also really nice to see, and taste the honey after, which comes from your meadows, which comes from the plants that you planted. It's just such a beautiful thing. Really, I don't know. Yeah. Any more questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I didn't say that. I should have. Yes. Thank you.
And you're welcome to